I still remember the day I found out. It was a crisp Sunday morning in October, the kind where the leaves in our Connecticut neighborhood had just started to turn gold and crimson. My husband Michael and I had been married for 7 years, and we'd built what I thought was a perfect life in our colonial-style home in a quiet suburb of Hartford. I was 32, working as a pediatric nurse at Connecticut Children's Medical Center, while Michael ran his family's construction business with his father. We had our routines, our friends from church, our plans for children once we'd finished renovating the upstairs bedrooms. I'd always been close with Michael's parents, especially his father Frank, who treated me like the daughter he never had. His mother Eleanor was different, always polite but with an edge of criticism that hung in the air between us. She'd make comments about my career, such demanding hours for a woman who wants a family. My appearance, that hairstyle is so modern, isn't it? Or my cooking. My Michael grew up with home-cooked meals every night. I'd learned to smile through it, reminding myself that she loved her son, and that was what mattered. That Sunday, Michael had left early for church, saying he needed to help set up for the fall fundraiser. I was running late after covering an overnight shift, so I told him I'd meet him there. When I arrived at First Baptist of Hartford, I noticed Michael's car but couldn't find him inside. Pastor Davis was just beginning his sermon about forgiveness and redemption, themes that would become painfully relevant in the hours that followed. After the service, I searched for Michael in the fellowship hall where volunteers were setting up for the fundraiser. Mrs. Peterson, our elderly church secretary, touched my arm gently. "If you're looking for Michael, dear, I think he and Rebecca went to get more decorations from the storage room about 20 minutes ago. Rebecca Johnson, the new music director who had joined our congregation 3 months earlier. 26 years old, with a voice like an angel and the kind of natural beauty that didn't need makeup. She'd been spending a lot of time with the building committee, which Michael chaired, planning the renovation of the church's aging sanctuary." "Thanks, Mrs. Peterson," I said, making my way toward the storage area in the church basement. The hallway was dim, lit only by the emergency exit signs. I could hear muffled voices as I approached the storage room, and something in me already knew. It was like my body was preparing for the impact before my mind could process what was happening. The door was slightly ajar. Through the crack I could see them, Michael pressing Rebecca against the shelving unit, his hands in her long blonde hair, her fingers working at his belt. They were so engrossed in each other they didn't hear me push the door open. "Michael." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too controlled for the hurricane raging inside me. They jumped apart like teenagers caught by a parent. Rebecca's face flushed crimson as she straightened her blouse. Michael looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Olivia, this isn't... I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The truth was right there in front of me. In Rebecca's smudged lipstick on my husband's collar, in the guilty panic in both their eyes. I turned and walked away, my legs somehow carrying me up the stairs and out to the parking lot. I could hear Michael calling after me, but I kept moving, got into my car and drove. I had no destination in mind. I just needed to be anywhere but there. I ended up at Riverside Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the Connecticut River. The water flowed steadily, indifferent to my world collapsing. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and messages from Michael, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. Instead, I called the one person I knew would understand. "Jen, it's me. Can I come over? I need to talk." Jennifer had been my best friend since nursing school. She lived about 20 minutes away, and when I arrived at her apartment, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" she asked, guiding me to her couch. The words spilled out of me, along with tears I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. Jen listened, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "That bastard," she finally said, "and in church, of all places." 7 years, I whispered. 7 years, and he throws it away for... what? Some younger model? A pretty face and a nice voice? "Men are idiots," Jen said firmly, pouring me a glass of wine despite it being barely noon. "But this isn't about you not being enough, Liv. This is about Michael making a terrible, selfish choice." My phone buzzed again. Michael for the 10th time. Finally, I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was frantic. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, surprised at how steady I sounded. "Please, Olivia. Come home. Let me explain. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home, Michael. What you did was a choice." I hung up before he could respond. I stayed at Jen's that night, sleeping fitfully on her guest bed. By morning, I'd received over 30 messages from Michael, ranging from desperate apologies to angry accusations that I was overreacting by not coming home to talk. There were also 3 missed calls from Eleanor, Michael's mother. "You should check your voicemail," Jen said over coffee. "Get it over with." I did. Eleanor's voice was tight with controlled fury. "Olivia, this is Eleanor. Michael is absolutely devastated. I don't know what he told you happened, but I'm sure it's being blown out of proportion. Marriage takes work and forgiveness. Nobody is perfect, dear. Call me back so we can discuss how to move forward from this little incident. Little incident. As if I'd caught Michael taking an extra cookie, not with his hands all over another woman. "She's unbelievable," Jen muttered when I played the message for her. "She's always taken his side," I said. "Even when we were dating, if we had a disagreement, it was always my fault in her eyes." "What are you going to do?" Jen asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Go home and listen to Michael's excuses? Try to forgive and forget? Pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen? "I need to go home," I said finally. "Not to reconcile. At least I don't think so. But to face this. I can't hide at your place forever." Jen nodded. "Want me to come with you?" "No," I said. "This is something I need to do alone." The drive back to our house felt surreal. Everything looked the same. The neat suburban streets, the fall decorations on porches, children playing in yards. But nothing would ever be the same again. Michael's car was in the driveway, along with his parents' Lincoln. Great, just what I needed, an audience for this conversation. I took a deep breath and walked inside. They were sitting in the living room, Michael on the edge of the sofa looking like he hadn't slept, Frank in the armchair with a grim expression, and Eleanor perched next to Michael, her hand on his arm protectively. They all looked up when I entered. "Olivia." Michael stood immediately. "Thank God you're home." "I'm not staying," I said. "I just came to get some things." Eleanor rose, smoothing her immaculate slacks. "Now, Olivia, don't be hasty. We all make mistakes. Michael has explained everything to us." "Has he?" I looked directly at Michael. "Did you tell them exactly what I saw?" Michael had the decency to look ashamed. "I told them I betrayed your trust, that I've been inappropriate with Rebecca." "Inappropriate," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" Frank cleared his throat. "Olivia, what my son did was wrong. No question. But running away isn't going to solve anything. I'd always respected Frank. He was a good man who'd built his business from nothing, who treated his employees fairly and his family with love. But in that moment, even his reasonable tone felt like a betrayal. "I'm not running away," I said. "I'm taking space to figure out what I want to do." "What you want to do?" Eleanor's voice rose. "You're his wife. You took vows before God, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. I don't remember in faithfulness and in adultery being part of those vows, Eleanor." "Nobody is perfect," she snapped. "Michael made a mistake. A serious one, yes, but it was one time." "It wasn't one time," I interrupted, suddenly certain. The late meetings, the weekend church projects, the way he'd been protective of his phone. Was it, Michael? His silence was answer enough. "How long?" I asked. Michael stared at the floor. 3 months. The timeline clicked into place, since Rebecca had joined the church. 3 months of lies. 3 months of coming home to me after being with her. "Olivia," Eleanor tried again. "Marriages face challenges. This is just one challenge you need to overcome together. With prayer and counselling." "Stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "This is between Michael and me. Not you, not the church, not anyone else. I walked past them toward the stairs, needing to escape their scrutiny while I packed a bag. Michael followed me to our bedroom. "Liv, please, I'll do anything. I'll quit the building committee. I'll change churches if you want. It was a stupid, horrible mistake." I pulled a suitcase from our closet, the same one we'd used for our anniversary trip to Cape Cod just 2 months earlier. 3 months isn't a mistake, Michael. It's a deliberate choice you made every single day. "I love you," he said, his voice breaking. "Not her. You." I paused in folding a sweater. "Did you tell her that too?" He didn't answer. "That's what I thought." I continued packing methodically. Clothes. Toiletries, my laptop, the framed photo of my parents from our wedding day. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. When I came back downstairs with my suitcase, Eleanor was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "You're making a terrible mistake," she said. "Pride has no place in a marriage. You need to forgive." "Forgiveness might be possible someday," I replied. "But not today, and not because you're demanding it." I turned to Frank, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the whole situation. "I'm sorry, Frank." He nodded. "This isn't your doing, Olivia. Take the time you need." As I reached for the door, Eleanor called after me. "If you leave now, you're just proving what I always told Michael, that when things got difficult, you wouldn't have the strength to be the wife he needs." I turned back slowly. What Michael needs right now isn't a wife who pretends nothing happened. What he needs is to face the consequences of his actions. I looked at Michael. "I'll be at Jen's. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk." The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. In my car, I allowed myself one moment of complete breakdown, sobs that racked my body, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Then I wiped my eyes, started the engine, and drove away from the life I thought we'd built together. The next week passed in a blur. I called in sick to work for 2 days, then forced myself to return, finding solace in the simple, meaningful tasks of caring for sick children. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but I kept the details vague. Going through some personal issues was all I would say. Michael called and texted constantly. I responded only to practical matters. He could forward my mail. I'd arranged to pick up more of my things when I was ready. His parents tried too, Frank with a kind, respectful message saying he was there if I needed to talk. Eleanor with increasingly manipulative voicemails about family loyalty and Christian forgiveness. On Thursday evening, just as I was leaving the hospital after my shift, I received a text from an unknown number. "Olivia, this is Rebecca Johnson. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to speak with you, please." My first instinct was to delete it, block the number, and pretend I'd never seen it. What could she possibly say that would matter? But curiosity, or perhaps masochism, won out. "What do you want?" The response came quickly. "To apologise in person, and to tell you something you should know. Can we meet somewhere public?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, one I knew Michael would never frequent. When I arrived, Rebecca was already there, clutching a mug with both hands, looking nervous and much younger than her 26 years. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her, not bothering with pleasantries. "You said you had something to tell me," I replied. "So tell me." She took a deep breath. "First, I want to say how sorry I am. What I did, what we did, was inexcusable. I betrayed my own values and hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Is that all? You could have texted that." "No," she said, looking down at her coffee. "There's more. Michael, he told me things. About your marriage. He said you were essentially separated. Living separate lives under one roof. That you had agreed to stay married in name only, for appearances, because of his position at church and in his family's business. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's a lie. We were never separated, not even close." She nodded miserably. "I realised that. Eventually. But by then..." She trailed off. "By then you were already sleeping with my husband," I finished for her. "Yes." At least she had the decency not to deny it. "But there's something else you should know. Michael has done this before. The coffee shop suddenly seemed too warm, too loud. What do you mean, before? There was someone at his previous church, before you moved to Hartford, a woman named Diane. He let it slip once, when he was telling me not to worry about consequences. He said his mother had handled it before. Eleanor, of course. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I think you deserve the truth, and because... She hesitated. Because his mother came to see me yesterday. She offered me money to leave the church quietly, to tell everyone I'd received a job offer elsewhere. She made it very clear that if I didn't take the deal, she would make sure everyone knew I was the aggressor, that I had pursued her married son and nearly ruined his family. And did you? Pursue him? Rebecca met my eyes for the first time. No, he pursued me. But that doesn't excuse my choices. I knew he was married. I should have said no. I sat back, processing this new information. Michael wasn't just a one-time cheater, he was a serial adulterer. And his mother was his clean-up crew. What are you going to do? I asked Rebecca. I've already resigned from the church. I'm moving back to my parents in Vermont next week. She looked down again. I took her money. I'm not proud of that, but I need a fresh start. How much? $20,000. She looked embarrassed. I know it sounds like she was paying me off, and I guess she was, but my student loans... I held up a hand. I don't need your justifications. Does Michael know about this arrangement? I don't think so. Mrs. Wilson made it clear this was between us. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. As I stood to leave, Rebecca reached out, not quite touching me. Olivia, I really am sorry. I believe you, I said, but that doesn't change anything. I walked out of the coffee shop with my mind racing. The betrayal had just doubled in size. Not only had my husband cheated, but this apparently wasn't his first time. And his mother had been covering for him, maybe for years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in Jen's guest room, staring at the ceiling, turning over everything I'd learned. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I called in sick to work again and drove to the bank as soon as it opened. Michael and I had both individual and joint accounts. I withdrew half of our joint savings, $42,650, and deposited it into my personal account. Then I called a lawyer a colleague had recommended when she'd gone through her own divorce 2 years earlier. The receptionist at Webster Family Law squeezed me in for a consultation that afternoon. Meredith Webster was a sharp woman in her 50s, with short grey hair and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. Tell me what's happening, she said after introductions. I laid out the situation, the affair I'd discovered, Rebecca's revelation about the previous infidelity, Eleanor's payoff. Do you want to try to save the marriage? Meredith asked bluntly. I don't think there's anything to save, I answered, not with someone who could lie so thoroughly for so long. She nodded, making notes. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity can still be relevant to property division and alimony considerations. Do you have documentation of the affair? Not really. Just what I saw and what Rebecca told me. Get it, Meredith advised. Text messages, emails, credit card statements showing gifts or hotel charges, anything that proves the infidelity. And this previous affair, see if you can get this Diane to confirm it. I don't even know her last name. Start with social media. Check his previous church's Facebook page or newsletter archives. And don't tell your husband or his family that you're doing this. The element of surprise will work in our favour. I left Meredith's office with a plan and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since finding Michael and Rebecca in the storage room. That evening I called Frank. Not Eleanor, not Michael, but Frank, the one person in the family I still trusted, at least somewhat. Olivia, he answered, sounding relieved. How are you? Not great, Frank, but I'm surviving. I was hoping we could meet. Just the two of us. There was a pause. Of course. When? We arranged to meet for lunch the next day at a diner halfway between his office and Jen's apartment. When I arrived, Frank was already there, looking older than I remembered. Thank you for meeting me, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Your family, Olivia, despite everything, The waitress took our orders, and when she left, I got straight to the point. Did you know about Diane? Frank's expression shifted from confusion to recognition to resignation in the space of seconds. Who told you about her? Does it matter? Is it true? Did Michael cheat before at your old church? Frank sighed heavily. Yes, about a year before you two met. He was engaged to someone else at the time, Andrea Mercer. Diane was the assistant youth pastor. And Eleanor handled it, I pressed. She paid Diane to leave quietly. Andrea never knew. She thought Diane got a better job offer. They broke up a few months later for unrelated reasons. At least that's what Michael said. Did you approve of this cover-up? Frank looked pained. No. I wanted Michael to come clean, to face what he'd done. But Eleanor, she's always protected him. Too much, in my opinion. She convinced me it would destroy his reputation in the church, in the business. And now? Does she have your support in covering up what he did to me? No, Frank said firmly. I told them both this time was different. You deserve better, Olivia. I'm ashamed of my son's behaviour and my wife's response to it. I believed him. Frank had always been the moral compass of the family, even if Eleanor often overpowered him with her forceful personality. I'm filing for divorce, I told him. I wanted you to hear it from me. He nodded sadly. I understand. I won't pretend I'm not disappointed. I always hoped you two would work through this somehow. But I respect your decision. There's something else, I said, hesitating. Eleanor paid Rebecca to leave town. $20,000. Frank closed his eyes briefly. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. Did that money come from the business? Possibly. Eleanor has signing authority on some of the accounts. That was interesting, and potentially useful information. Frank, I don't want to put you in a difficult position between your wife and son and me. But I need to know. Will you be honest if I need information during the divorce proceedings? He met my gaze steadily. I will. I love my son, but what he did was wrong. And what Eleanor is doing, enabling him, that's wrong too. It's time they both faced consequences. As we finished our lunch, Frank reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Olivia. You deserved better from all of us. Not from you, I said honestly. You've always been good to me. Well, he said with a sad smile, at least I did something right. That afternoon I began my detective work. I started with Michael's previous church, Grace Baptist in New Haven. Their website had a news archive going back 10 years. Sure enough, in the June 2016 newsletter, there was a farewell announcement for Diane Mitchell, assistant youth pastor, who was following God's call to a new ministry opportunity in Ohio. Next, I searched her name on Facebook and found her easily. Now Diane Mitchell Russo, married and working as a chaplain at a hospital in Cleveland. I sent her a carefully worded message, explaining who I was and asking if she would be willing to speak with me about a sensitive matter involving Michael Wilson. While waiting for a response, I turned my attention to Michael's digital footprint. When we'd first moved in together, we'd shared our passwords as a sign of trust. He'd probably changed his by now, but it was worth trying. To my surprise, his email password, our anniversary date plus his mother's initials, still worked. I felt a twinge of guilt as I logged in, but it was quickly overshadowed by what I found. Hundreds of emails between Michael and Rebecca, going back exactly 3 months. Flirtatious at first, then explicitly sexual, plans to meet not just at church but at a motel off the highway, and most damning of all, a conversation about me. Rebecca. Shouldn't we tell Olivia? This isn't fair to her. Michael. It would only hurt her. She's focused on her career anyway. We barely connect anymore. It's basically a marriage in name only at this point. Rebecca. But she thinks everything is fine. Michael. It's easier this way. My family's business, the church. It's complicated. Trust me, this is better for everyone. I forwarded these emails to my personal account, along with receipts for jewellery he'd bought that I'd never received, and charges from the Green Valley Motel that coincided with nights he'd claimed to be at church meetings. Just as I was logging out, a message notification appeared on my Facebook app. Diane had responded, "I'll talk to you. This number is secure." She'd included a phone number with an Ohio area code. I called immediately. "Diane Mitchell Russo." "Diane, this is Olivia Wilson. Thank you for responding." "When I saw your message, I knew exactly what it was about," she said. Her voice was calm. Professional, the voice of someone who spoke with people in crisis every day. "He did it again, didn't he?" "Yes, and I'm trying to understand everything." "I'm not proud of what happened between Michael and me," Diane said. "I was 24, new to ministry, and he was charismatic, charming. He told me his engagement was just for show, that he and Andrea had an understanding. I believed him because I wanted to." "And Eleanor paid you to leave?" $30,000 and a glowing recommendation for a position in Ohio. She made it clear that if I didn't take the deal, she would tell everyone I had seduced her son. Tried to break up his engagement. Given the church politics at the time, I knew who they would believe. "Do you have any documentation of this payment? The agreement?" "I do, actually. Eleanor made me sign an NDA, but she was smart enough not to specify what it was about, just that I wouldn't disparage the Wilson family. I kept a copy. After what happened, I didn't trust her not to come after me later. Would you be willing to share that with me, and possibly make a statement for my divorce proceedings?" There was a pause. "The NDA might not be enforceable if it was covering up unethical behaviour," I suggested. "My lawyer could advise you." "Let me think about it," Diane said. "In the meantime, I'll scan the agreement and email it to you." "Thank you, Diane. Can I ask one more question? Why did you agree to talk to me after all this time?" She sighed. "Because I've spent years in therapy dealing with the fallout from that relationship. Because what happened wasn't just about an affair, it was about manipulation and power, and because no one warned me about Michael, I want to break that cycle." After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. The man I married wasn't who I thought he was. Perhaps he never had been. That evening I got another call, from Eleanor. "Olivia, this has gone on long enough," she said without preamble. "You need to come home and work things out with Michael. He's absolutely devastated." "I'm not coming back, Eleanor." "Don't be ridiculous. Every marriage has problems. Michael made a mistake." "Multiple mistakes," I corrected her. "With multiple women, over many years." There was a telling pause. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know about Diane Mitchell. I know about the $30,000 you paid her to leave quietly. I know about the $20,000 you just paid Rebecca. And I know you use company funds to do it." Another, longer pause. "Who have you been talking to?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm filing for divorce and I have evidence of Michael's infidelity and your efforts to cover it up." "You wouldn't dare drag our family name through the mud like that," Eleanor hissed. "I don't want to," I said honestly. "But I will if I have to. I deserve a fair settlement after 7 years of marriage to a man who couldn't stay faithful." "What do you want?" Eleanor's voice had turned calculating. "I want what's fair. Half of our marital assets, including Michael's stake in the family business. And I want you to stop calling me. Stop pressuring me to forgive and forget. This marriage is over." "You greedy little—" I hung up before she could finish. My hands were shaking, but I felt stronger than I had in days. I was taking back control. The next morning, I received an email from Diane with the scanned NDA attached. It was carefully worded but clearly a hush agreement, with a payment of $30,000 in exchange for her resignation and silence regarding any interactions with the Wilson family. I forwarded it to Meredith, along with the emails and receipts I'd gathered from Michael's account. She called me an hour later. "This is excellent work, Olivia. The previous affair and payout establish a pattern of behaviour. We're in a strong position now." "What's next?" I asked. "I'll draft the divorce petition. In the meantime, you should secure your finances if you haven't already, and prepare yourself. Once we serve Michael, things might get ugly." "Uglier than they already are?" "People show their true colours when money and reputations are at stake." She wasn't wrong. When Michael was served with divorce papers the following week, all pretense of remorse vanished. He called me, furious. Adultery claims? Financial malfeasance? Are you trying to destroy me? I'm trying to get what I deserve after 7 years of marriage to someone who couldn't be faithful. My mother was right about you, he spat. You're just after our money. You never loved me. The irony of his accusation was almost laughable. I loved you completely, Michael. You're the one who couldn't be bothered to honour our vows. You'll regret this, he threatened before hanging up. The threats escalated. Eleanor called my workplace, trying to speak to my supervisor about my unstable behaviour. Michael drove by Jen's apartment repeatedly. Frank, to his credit, tried to intervene, but his influence over his wife and son seemed limited when their interests were threatened. The divorce proceedings dragged on. Michael contested everything, the division of assets, my claim to part of his share in the family business, even our wedding gifts. His lawyer portrayed me as a gold digger, trying to capitalise on a minor indiscretion. But we had our evidence. When Meredith deposed Rebecca, she confirmed everything: the affair, Eleanor's payoff, Michael's lies about our marriage. When we submitted Diane's NDA and her statement about the previous affair, Michael's lawyer requested an immediate recess. When we reconvened, their tone had changed. They were suddenly open to settlement discussions. They know they can't win if this goes to trial, Meredith explained. The evidence of repeated infidelity and financial impropriety with company funds would be devastating, not just for the divorce, but for the business reputation. The settlement offer came, $350,000 plus the house, which had about $200,000 in equity, in exchange for my silence about the affairs and financial arrangements. I would sign an NDA, just as Diane had. It's a good offer, Meredith advised. You could fight for more, but litigation is expensive and emotionally draining. And the NDA? It prevents you from publicly discussing the details of the divorce, the affairs, or the payoffs. But it doesn't prevent you from telling your close friends and family the truth. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to reject the NDA on principle. Why should I be silenced when I'd done nothing wrong? But another part just wanted to move on, to rebuild my life without the shadow of this betrayal hanging over me. I'll take it, I decided. But I want one addition to the agreement. I want a written apology from Michael acknowledging the affairs and his lies. Not for public consumption, just for me. Meredith raised an eyebrow. That's unusual, but I'll ask. To my surprise, Michael agreed. His letter was brief and probably drafted by his lawyer, but it contained the words I needed to hear. I acknowledge that I was unfaithful repeatedly during our marriage. I lied to you about my relationships with other women. My actions, not yours, destroyed our marriage. It wasn't poetic, but it was true. And in a strange way, it helped me begin to heal. The divorce was finalised 6 months after that terrible Sunday, when I discovered Michael and Rebecca in the church storage room. I sold the house, too many memories, and bought a smaller place closer to the hospital. I took a portion of the settlement money and went back to school part-time for a nurse practitioner licence, something I'd always wanted to do. Eleanor continued to spread her version of events among their church friends, that I'd abandoned Michael over a momentary weakness, that I'd extorted money from the family business. Some believed her. Others, who had perhaps seen through Michael's charm before I did, knew better. Frank still calls occasionally to check on me. He left the family business, unable to continue working with a son he no longer respected and a wife whose moral compass he couldn't trust. He started a smaller construction company, focusing on affordable housing projects, work he finds more meaningful. As for me, I'm slowly rebuilding. There are still days when the betrayal feels fresh, when I wonder how I could have been so blind for so long. But there are also days when I recognise my own strength, my ability to stand up for myself when it mattered most. I ran into Rebecca once about a year after the divorce. She was back in town visiting friends and we crossed paths at a coffee shop, the same one where she'd confessed the truth about Michael. She looked startled to see me, then ashamed. Olivia, It's okay, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. We've all moved on. She nodded gratefully. I heard you went back to school, that's great. And you? Are you doing well? I'm teaching music at a high school in Vermont now. No church work anymore. She hesitated. I heard Michael got engaged again, some woman from his new church. I felt a flicker of concern for this unknown woman, but it wasn't my responsibility to warn her. Maybe Michael had changed, maybe he hadn't. Either way, it was no longer my problem. I hope they're happy, I said, and realised I meant that too. Not because Michael deserved happiness after what he'd done, but because I no longer needed to carry the weight of his moral failings. I sometimes think about what Eleanor said that day in our living room. Nobody is perfect. She was right about that much. We all make mistakes, have moments of weakness, fail to live up to our own standards. But there's a difference between imperfection and deliberate deception, between a mistake and a pattern of betrayal. I've learned to forgive, not because anyone deserved or demanded it, but because forgiveness freed me to move forward. I've even forgiven Eleanor in a way, understanding that her desperate protection of her son came from love, however misguided. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing yourself to be mistreated. It doesn't mean staying in a situation that diminishes you. Sometimes the strongest act of self-love is walking away from people who can't or won't value you properly. I don't know what the future holds. I'm dating again, cautiously. I'm building a career that fulfills me. I'm creating a life that's authentically mine, not defined by someone else's expectations or betrayals. And that, I've discovered, is what real forgiveness looks like. Not returning to what was, but growing into what could be. Not diminishing the pain of the past, but refusing to let it dictate your future. Not pretending the wound never happened, but wearing your scars with dignity as evidence of your capacity to heal. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.